I think we can start whenever you're ready.
I am ready.
Please read the preamble and call the meeting to order.
Okay. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law and section 101.021 of the of 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the city planning department conduct its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you use the raise hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raise hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile version and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking on the raised hand icon again and mute your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located at the bottom of the WebEx screen. With that said, the Landmarks Commission meeting of August 12, 2021 will now be called to order. First item of business on the agenda this morning is case number 21-055 in the Ohio Historical District for a certificate of appropriateness.
Mr. Chair, just a point of order. We need to have a roll call.
Oh, yes, okay. Donald, would you call the roll, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Anderson.
Here.
Ms. Bailey. Mr. Bonezzi.
Here.
Mr. Colicchia.
Here.
Director Collier. Mr. Dreyer.
Here.
Councilman Jones. Mr. Santora.
Here.
Mr. Strickland.
Here.
Mr. Tarasik.
Here.
Ms. Trott. I will also note that staff in attendance today are Ava Schmidt, Carl Brunges, who will be hosting the meeting, and our representative from law, Kevin Roberts. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We can begin with our first certificate of appropriateness for case 21-055. Are we ready for a presentation?
Mr. Chairman, I'll just remind the commission that we saw this project as a concept plan on July 8th.
Right.
There are actually two items to act on today. It's one project, but there are two buildings at 3811 Clinton, and we should review and act on both of them today. And those are both items 1 and 2.
Do we need to treat each one individually or combine them?
I think the presentation combines them both. So
That's good.
I'll let the applicants walk through the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Don, for the information on the last Landmarks meeting. I will also note that last week we received approval from the Ohio City Design Review. So we now have Block Club approval, Ohio City Design Review approval for this plan proposal for both new construction as well as the modification rehabilitation of an existing structure on the lot. So just very quickly to highlight the scope of this project, this site plan here illustrates the project in its entirety. There is an existing home on the southern portion of the lot, which you see at the bottom of the site plan. That
Jason,
house was moved
Jason, this is
from.
Bob Strickland. Excuse me for a minute. Carl, I'm not seeing any presentation at all on my screen. I can see the participant panel at the top, but I've got a blank screen. It's labeled as Carl Brunge's screen, but I'm not seeing anything.
I can see the presentation, Carl, on my screen here, just to let you know.
I can as well.
I can as well.
Should I sign out and sign back in, Carl?
That might help. If everybody else is seeing it, then it might be an issue on your end right now.
Okay. I'll be leaving momentarily and then I'll come back. Just go ahead and continue. I'll join you.
Okay, got it. So the in the site plan here, you can see the existing home on the southern portion of the lot, which was moved from Tillman Avenue in the 1960s, and also on the northern portion of the lot, proposed new construction at as you see right there, just to the west of also a new home being built as well concurrently. If you could please advance to the next slide and keep going until we come to the north elevation of the new construction home. So this slide here illustrates a synthesis of comments that were received at the last landmarks meeting, as well as comments that were received for our conditional approval from Ohio City Design Review. So just to refresh everyone's memory, whenever we reviewed the concept for this project, comments received were around simplifying the design a little bit, redesigning the fenestration pattern to make it more historically appropriate, and that included changing the windows from casement to double hung and using a 2/2 configuration, which you can see in this principal elevation here. Those 2/2 windows are used throughout the new construction home, as well as replacement windows in the existing home that's being renovated as well. So in this image right here, you're seeing the home as it's viewed from Clinton Avenue. And then, Carl, if you wouldn't mind advancing to the couple slides showing the front of the house, the renderings from Clinton, please. So this is the house in context right here. Horizontal hardy board is used throughout across the entirety of the home here. So higher quality material being used on all sides, even those not visible. The main gable roof is a black dimensional tab shingle roof, and the gable at the front of the house, or the bay at the front of the house, excuse me, is using black standing seam metal roofing as well. We've adjusted this a little bit per comments from Ohio City Design Review. The materiality changed slightly. And just wanted to bring everybody up to speed on that. There was a copper colored roof that was changed to black standing seam per comments received from Ohio City Design Review. Some of the window sizes were adjusted just slightly, enlarged per their recommendations. And I believe that is everything that I have for the new construction home here. Carl, just as a point, similar to the Ohio City Design Review, should we pause at the moment, take a vote on the new construction home, or should I proceed and continue to present the existing home?
Jason, I think it would be good to go through the whole presentation,
I think
and
we
we
should continue.
can act on them separately at the end.
Yes.
Understood. Alrighty. If you wouldn't mind advancing to the next slide, please. and then keep going to the until the elevations. Here we go. So this is an elevation depicting the existing home that's currently at the southern portion of the lot that's existent today. This elevation shows in detail the proposed restoration of the home. So currently it is in disrepair. It is a wood-sided house, and we are proposing to replace with wood clad windows, 2/2 double hung configuration. Any repairs and modifications will be using wood siding. And in some subsequent slides, we have materiality or colors, proposed color scheme for the existing home at the rear of the lot. So this is showing any of the historical, any ornament, anything that is currently existing that has fallen into disrepair. We propose to bring that back, renovate historically, using historically appropriate materials and fenestration with this home. And then on the subsequent slides here as well, the other portion of this of the rear home is a proposed modification. We've been doing some digging and engaged a local historian, Tim Barrett, and Tim has been out to site and walked through the property with us. And we are also proposing, in addition to the restoration of the principal facade of this home, is the removal of a portion of the home at the rear that faces Vine Court. If you wouldn't mind advancing to the next slide, please. So the existing, or the previous slide, excuse me, shows the existing conditions. This slide shows the proposed new facade. So it allows the home to be converted to a carriage home. Two wood paneled garage doors are added on the southern facade. An overhang is placed at that facade. Light fixtures as well, illuminating the area off of Vine Court, and the addition of new windows along the southern portion of the house that match in size and configuration with what is seen around the other facades of the house. If you wouldn't mind advancing to the next slide as well, please. So current existing conditions here, and then the next slide will show the proposed modifications. And then the next slide as well, please. And then the subsequent slide will show the proposed modifications. And then here we see the existing home. Again, we consulted with Mr. Tim Barrett on some historically appropriate color schemes for the home. All of the band boards, any trim that's found is going to be restored and kept. We're proposing Sherwin-Williams. I'm sorry, that's Roycroft copper red for the main body of the home, with the trim and accent colors shown as well here, as well as light fixtures proposed for the home. And I believe that the only other slides here just show the massing of the modifications here. And the next slide will show that removed. And then I have one from the other angle shown looking west down Vine Court here. And there we are. That's everything that I have for the committee here. And be happy to answer any questions regarding the new construction home or the proposed modifications to the existing home at the rear of the lot.
Mr. Chairman, Donna Gregonis is in attendance today with the Design Review Committee report.
Okay, can we hear from Donna, please?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
Good.
Thank you for hearing the local committee's comments and the communities. Again, this is Donna Gregonis with Ohio City Incorporated, Neighborhood Development Director, for those of you who may not know. So Mr. Rohal did present the Martin residents to the local community, and the community is in favor of the proposed home and remodel. And they did not have any negative comments to share with me. And then the local committee, some of the comments that they made were that they were still not totally happy with the overall look of the home, that the designer, they wanted him to stick with really one style and stick with it, but ultimately they did approve the design on the new home with conditions and asked them to come back to the committee to review colors at a later date. And those conditions were to review the size of the circular window, that it might look better, larger, and to change the window trim colors and trim boards and portico gable color. And then also asking the designer to remove the copper color on the standing seam metal roof and pediment over the front door to something else. And black standing seam was proposed, and that seemed to be agreeable by the committee. And I'm not sure if he changed it. He did change it in the drawing, so that is shown. So it was approved with conditions listed. And they would like him to come back to review the final colors at a later date. And then the rear building, the restoration of the existing home, it was approved as presented with the suggestion to make sure that the windows are aluminum clad or wood, and that they are 2 panels over 2 for the rear building. Thank you. And they were very complimentary of the restoration of the historic home in the rear. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I think we had in the previous meetings, some issues regarding the windows. I think it was Michelle Anderson that made some comments regarding to them. Michelle, any comments on this?
Giancarlo, the windows are greatly improved. I'm really pleased with the modifications that the applicant has made. I do concur with the local design review committee. I think that round window is a little out of proportion. I think it would be better a little larger, but overall, I'm happy with the new look.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from commission members? And are we ready to call for a vote?
Mr. Chair, we have Mr. Santoro with his hand raised.
Mr. Santoro, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had one question. Is there a rendering showing the copper color on the back, the carriage house? It's
So
my
if
understanding. Yeah, it's my understanding from the presentation that the main body of the house would be the copper color. Is that correct?
The main body of the home at the rear portion of the lot is proposed as the Sherwin-Williams Roycroft copper. There is no rendering right now. We just have photos of the existing home shown with the color swatches here.
Okay, I'm just wondering how that would look as the main field color for the house. Without being able to see it, I really don't know, but I'm assuming that you guys had looked at it and it seemed to be pretty okay.
Yes, we had actually consulted with Cleveland Restoration Society as well as the local historian Tim Barrett, who proposed those or accepted those as historically accurate colors.
Okay. And then you guys are also maintaining and replacing all the trim boards, I heard you say, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, perfect. I really want to compliment you guys. I think you did a great job on both the new home and the restoration. And I do agree. I feel that window, the circular window, should be a little bit larger. But other than that, great job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the commission?
No other hands raised at this time.
Okay, so my comments are that, we discussed this at length several times, and I think we finally came to the point where everybody's satisfied. Looking at this rendering, I have a question. So that the white structure right now, this portion that we are seeing at the upper photograph, that all that white will be the bronze color, and the trimming will be the charcoal color. Am I
So
right?
right now, all of the white that you're seeing will be it will be a white. It'll be it's coming off as very, very bright white right now, but it will be just a little bit of a creamier white, just a warm white, if you will. And then, so everything that you're seeing that is white right here, it will indeed be white. And then the
Okay.
trim boards will be charcoal.
Very cool. And then the copper that you're referring to is only in the back.
That's correct. And that's just the name of the Sherwin-Williams color. That'll just be at the rear house at the back. Any of the copper color that was previously proposed for the new construction home has been removed at the request of Ohio City Design Review.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Of course.
For the work you've done, and I think we're ready to call for a vote.
And just to remind the commission, we will need a motion to act on the new construction and the renovation of the house in the back separately.
Will somebody make a motion, please?
This is Michelle. I make a motion that we approve as presented, and with the applicant submitting the final color to staff and revising the size of that round window. I think that covers it.
That's a motion for the new construction, Michelle?
Yes.
I'll second that motion.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Donna, could you call for a vote, please?
Thank you. Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey. Not sure you're with us yet. Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchia,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Santora,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Let's move forward to the next case, which is 21062. Ohio City Historic sorry, number 3, actually.
Mr. Chair, do we need a motion for the second portion of that project for the restoration of the house?
We do.
I thought we combined the two into one.
No, that was just, the motion was just for the new construction.
I see. Okay, well then. Do we need to go through the full presentation again, or should we just?
No, we just need a motion and a second on the restoration of the building in the river.
Could I ask for a motion?
This is Michelle. I move that we approve the restoration of the house in the rear as presented.
This is Anthony Santoral, second.
Thank you. Let's go for a vote then.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey, Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchia,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Santora,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The third item on the agenda, which we also discussed previously, is the 1966 Randall Road residence.
Mr. Chairman, as a point of order, this was tabled on June 10th.
Right,
We need a motion to take it off the table.
I see. Okay. Will someone make a motion to that regard, please?
This is Alan. I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Alan. Do we have a second?
I'll second. This is Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. We have a motion and a second, so let's proceed with the presentation then.
Mr. We should,
Who was giving the
we should,
presentation?
we should do a roll call vote.
Oh, we should,
Yes.
okay.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey, Mr. Bonesi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchia,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer, Mr. Santora,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik.
Yes.
The motion is taken off the table.
Very good. Thank you. May we begin with the presentation then? Who's giving the presentation? Mr. Biggin?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Paul Began. I'm not quite exactly sure how to proceed on this particular item. Obviously, 2 months ago, we were before you. At that time, we requested that we get a complete list of modifications to the design that we presented so that we can make those modifications and resubmit them to you. We have done that, or at least to the best of our ability. And so I don't know, I mean, last time Mr. Brunges had a presentation for us as well. I don't know if it's worthwhile to have him or Mr. Pettit go through our presentation and tell us where we didn't do what you asked us to do. From our perspective, we have made all of the modifications to the designs as requested by the committee. Last communication from Mr. Pettit was that he thinks we got everything, but it has to come back to the committee. So at this point in time, I'm not exactly sure how to proceed, other than asking that the committee review and approve the changes we made per the direction of Mr. Pettit.
Mr. Chairman, in the presentation today, we have the presentation from the last meeting.
Mhm.
We also have a slide with the revisions to the house design. And we also have a slide with the showing the revisions to the garage, showing all 4 elevations. We did convey the comments from the last meeting to Mr. Began a month ago. And I shared that with the commission. I can go through all the items if you'd like, or we can just skip to the slide with showing the revisions. And if Mr. Began can go through and just enumerate what the changes are, I think that would be helpful for the
I think
commission.
that was your list, Mr. Pettit. Can you, after reviewing the drawings that we submitted to you, did we do everything that you asked us to do as far as the changes on the drawings? I mean, it would be odd for me to say, here's the list you gave us, and I will point out the list that you provided to us, and here they are, because we did do that. I mean, if you would like us to open up your document that you sent to us and point by point go through the list that you provided, I'd be happy to do that. Again, this is a little bit odd for me. I'm not quite sure exactly how to proceed. We did our best attempt to make the modifications suggested from this committee.
Can I just ask a quick thing?
Yeah.
This is Anthony Santora, and I'm sorry to jump in on here.
No, that's fine.
I'm going to just offer my 2 cents regarding this. Mr. Pettit is not the applicant, nor is he the designer of the property. It is the designer's and the applicant's job to walk us through the presentation, not Mr. Pettit's. He relayed the comments of the commission to you. You responded to them. And I think it would be more appropriate for you to walk us through. And if you want to go point by point, I think that would be fine. But I don't think it's the responsibility of Mr. Pettit to do that today.
I agree with that. I think, we received a set of requests or objections, whatever. I think, Mr. Began, you should just go through the whole process in response to the list that Mr. Pettit sent you. You can be brief about it, but we should cover each point.
Sure. It's probably worthwhile to go to the last slide then. I mean, the rest of the presentation is there just so that You had a refreshed memory of the last time that we presented to you 2 months ago.
Right.
You know, here you go. We've made the modifications, again, as requested by this committee and enumerated by staff, about doing hardy siding, about doing aluminum clad windows, about restoring the details. Those details are restored in wood. I think that's the majority of the requests. I mean, obviously in detail in specific places as shown on the drawing. Color scheme, again, as discussed at the meeting, was to do a two-tone gray for the body, and the trim being in a darker gray color, or the details being in a darker gray color, the overall trim being in it looks white on the drawing, it's actually very light gray, and the windows to be black.
So also, this is Anthony Santor again. Mr. Beacon, can you walk us through, I know one of the requests from the commission last time was to get some understanding of the floor plan layout since the exterior windows had shifted around on the facades. So can you kind of walk us through a little bit of the shifting of the windows? Did you guys put them back to where they were, or can you just talk to us about the spatial relationship as to why those windows were changed?
We did not change any window locations on the east or the south facades, which are relatively where the house is most viewable. On the north side, which is, I don't know, approximately 8 feet from the adjacent house there, there were some modifications to that based on the layout of inside the apartment. They either shifted over slightly or were made bigger and or smaller depending on the location. The windows on that facade were not in any type of a regular pattern prior. The elevation on the west side of the house actually, I think, only had one window in it and had an addition that has been since removed. So there was no precedent for the west side of it.
I think there's also an issue regarding the garage. Mr. Began, would you cover that for a second, please? And also the chimney, there were some comments regarding the chimney. What do we do with that?
Yeah, the owner requested that the board kindly not make him reconstruct a chimney that is not there.
Right.
The roof is on, the structure is on, the added cost, considering that he has had to wait 7 months now to get to this point from being halted on his project. And he's complying with, tens of thousands of dollars of additional work to
Work
do all these additional details, that the last item for the chimney be something that the committee consider waiving, as he would have to spend a lot of time and effort and cut holes in the roof that's already there to put that chimney back on. As far as the garage piece, and I see they're being flipped through on the screen there, the restoration of the garage, really the biggest piece is that that's not going to be a garage anymore, that those are going to be bedroom spaces for the unit that had existed in this structure. So the garage doors are being removed and infilled with trim to replicate what the doors were previously, understanding that we are inserting doors into them.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from commission members, please? Or questions or clarifications?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Santora, and Ms. Anderson have their hands raised.
Mr. Santoro, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I appreciate all the work that Mr. Began has done. I'm glad that the detailing has come back into the project. However, I do feel that it is appropriate that at least the front chimney be replaced. And I understand, Mr. Began, that you do not, and the owner does not wish to have a chimney put back, which is not there. But let's be honest, it is only not there because it was completely removed by the owner illegally without getting approvals. So I feel that it is important that it be replaced. It is a major architectural feature on the house. The ones farther in the back, I don't have an issue with. I think they're fine. I think the garage is fine. But I do feel that front chimney needs to be replaced and needs to be put back the way it was.
Mr. Biggin, is the foundation for that chimney still in existence? Does it go all the way down to the basement?
It sits there on the outside of the house as shown.
Okay. So then it would not be a huge issue to replace the chimney.
It actually would. It's going to cost him about $15,000. So I just want that to be, and again, I'm speaking a little bit on behalf of the owner, who obviously has been frustrated by the process, but wants to at least let the committee know, that the delay and the costs to replicate all of these details is approximately $80,000 beyond what his original budget for this project was. So
Mr. Began, if I can ask, how much would it have costed to restore the items that were on the building before they were completely removed by the owner?
Again, Mr. Santora, and obviously, I respect, I've worked with you on many projects before.
Right.
So this is,
No, and I can
hopefully you don't take
understand.
this as my defense is really only in defense of my client at this point in time. Let me refresh the committee's memory. So what we had found, the original intention of this project was not to remove any of the items on the outside of the house. We did get a permit for this project. We submitted drawings, they were reviewed, and they were approved by the building department. The owner began.
Just a quick point on that. Did the drawings that were submitted and approved include any exterior modifications?
Please let me explain. Thank you. As I told you at the very beginning, there was no intention to modify anything on the exterior of the house. Once the contractor began his construction.
Can I make a comment, Mr. Biggin, please?
Yes.
When you say the beginning, what do we mean by the beginning? Before you got involved as the architect?
No, we weren't. All right. Let me just refresh the committee's memory on the process to date. So we prepared drawings for Mr. Yap to renovate this house.
After some of the demolition had taken place?
No.
Okay.
We submitted drawings. They were reviewed by the building department and approved. A permit was issued.
Including the removal of the chimney.
Mr. Klickia, can I?
Sure.
I'd be happy to answer your questions. I'm sure they'll be answered as I explain the process.
Okay.
Upon the demolition of the interior of the house, it was discovered that there was no, all of the sheathing was on the interior face of the studs. All of the exterior siding was applied directly to the studs. So there was no exterior sheathing.
I remember you talking about.
Right. The contractor at the time, right, and myself advised the owner of his options. None of the options presented to Mr. Yap said that would be good for saving this house to just keep the siding attached to the studs on the outside. If we had done that, right, all that would happen is this house would further degrade, and all of the structural damage that has happened over the years from water infiltrating beyond the siding directly into the interior face of the cavity would further destroy this house. So as owner made the decision during, again, with permitted construction, in order going into the winter, last winter, right, that for the good of the house, it would be better to remove the siding, put sheathing on the outside of the house to maintain the structural integrity of the house, and add the wrap to it so that the house could be saved during the winter. So that's what got to the point where we removed stuff. It was not a blatant, oh, we're just going to remove the stuff out of here because we don't want it on the house. That was not the intention at the beginning by the owner. So, you know, come January, you know, we got a notification of a stop work order because of what had happened to the house. Understandably so. We went through a 4-month review process with Ohio City. Each time we went to the committee, we listened to what they said. We made the revisions. We submitted it back at the subsequent committee meeting. What had happened is they said added more things that they wanted done and restored. So we went to 3 meetings over a period of 4 months with Ohio City before we finally got their approval, which we did in May, which allowed us to come before your committee. Before your committee, we did request, because we'd been through so many meetings with Ohio City, that please help us provide a list of all the items that you would like us to see restored, so that next time we come back to you, we have addressed all of those items. So that's why we are here today.
Right.
That we'd like to do that.
Well, actually, could we hear from the neighborhood committee before we go ahead with your comments, please? Is there a representative?
Mr. Chairman, I believe Donna Gregonis had to leave the meeting.
Okay.
We have her testimony from the last meeting.
Which, so we don't have just any more comments from them pertaining to the revised
It did
drawings.
it did not go back to the committee because it was tabled by the commission. You know, they did approve it, but there were at least a dozen conditions based on that approval, and it was all based on restoring, you know, the existing details
Okay.
on the building, which I think is consistent with what the commission approved.
Right.
Commission discussed at the last meeting.
Okay, so those details have been complied with.
Mr. Chairman, you know, the one thing we asked for in the last meeting was that they restore, reinstate, or maintain the original architectural details on at least 3 elevations of the house, northeast and south, including the eave details.
Mhm.
And then we enumerated several of them. I'm not sure that all of those have been called out in the new drawings, things like the dentals. I just want to make sure that we account for everything that the commission asked for in the last meeting.
What do we deal with that? specifically, those items that the commission requested, and how have they been responded to by the architect? Have they been responded to? According to Mr. Began, they have been responded to, correct?
Are you asking me, Mr. Chairman?
Well, I'm asking you and Mr. Began, so these requests were made by the Landmarks Commission at the previous meeting in June have been complied with?
Yes. I think the
Accepted.
drawing, I think the
Right,
drawings
sorry.
reflect a greater level of detail restoration in the design. I'm not sure that they include everything.
Hmm.
I'm concerned about the eave details. You know, I'm not sure if the locations and proportions of the original windows on the north facade have been restored. Obviously, the chimney hasn't been replaced. You know, beyond that, I think it's an improved design. I did share with Mr. Began's firm that Tim Barrett referred someone at Cleveland Lumber to the applicant who can turn historic details and replicate them, even if it's in synthetic material. I just want to make sure that whatever our motion is today, that we account for everything that was raised at the last meeting.
Okay, including the chimney. That was an issue at the last meeting as well.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Began, can we go back to your presentation then and explain to us, please, how many of those conditions were actually met according to your current?
Again, Mr. Chair, what we had asked at the last committee meeting, and again, I hate to sound like a broken record, is that we be provided with a list of all of the requirements of the committee so that we can have that. I requested that we be allowed to work with staff, which I believe the committee did approve, to get all of those details. So again, there's a little bit level of frustration is I had hoped over the last 2 months that we could have gotten that list. We could have submitted revised drawings. We could have gotten comments back from staff and resubmitted those. Our intent is to provide all of those details, and we surely want to. We've wanted to since the beginning. The problem is each time we go to the committee, and this is yet happening again, looks like they did everything, but I want to know the but. Give us the list and we'd be happy to comply. So if your motion is we approve it, as long as Don Pettit says that everything the committee said is good, that would be fine with us.
Okay, so at this point, what I would like to do is discuss those conditions and leave the chimney out for 1 second.
Yeah.
And I would like to hear from committee members regarding those conditions. Any comments pertaining
We
to
have
those?
Miss Anderson and Miss Bailey with their hands raised.
Ms. Anderson, please.
Thank you, the chair. I guess I just want to talk a little bit about these details, like the dentals and the scallop siding or the decorative siding, and any trim on the any rondelles or rosettes. I just want to make sure that those are restored in the size and proportion to what was there, at the same elevation. So I think the dentals protrude from the house somewhat. You know, I want to see all of that. I know Cleveland Lumber is capable of creating that kind of thing. So, you know, that's a great resource. I think my preference, and this has come up in other presentations by other applicants, the wood, your standard pine, it just doesn't hold up. If you can find a wood, a cedar, or something that would hold up against our damp climate, that would be a preference. I think that would save the applicant money in the long run if he plans to hold on to this property. He doesn't want to be replacing these expensive details 10 years from now because the wood gave out and it's rotting away. You know, that is my concern. I just want to see it brought back. I just want to make a little mention of some architectural history in Ohio
Mr.
City.
Beacon has agreed to bring those back, correct?
That is correct, and to the best of our ability, they are shown and indicated on the drawings. I don't know if Mr. Brunges can zoom into that front elevation, all of the dentals, all of the eave details, all of those things are shown based on documentation provided by the counter presentation prepared by Mr. Brunges, and I believe with the assistance from Mr. Barrett last time. So we did try in the best of our ability to show all of those details on the drawings and point them out.
Ms. Anderson, are you satisfied with that?
Yes, I am satisfied. I just want to make mention that there was a house, I think it's 4911 Franklin at the corner of 50th and Franklin. And that was restored, like 30 years ago. And the developer encountered the same situation where the sheathing was on the inside of the house.
Mhm.
And it created a lot of headaches, but he did not remove all of the outside clapboard and siding and trim. Somehow he managed to work with it, but it was a headache for him. It was a nasty surprise. It really elevated the cost of the project. But yeah, he managed to work with what was there. So I just wanted to bring that one up.
Thank you very much. Ms. Bailey, please, your comments?
Yes. I agree with what Ms. Anderson saying, because some of her comments on my note. Just want to make sure that the details of the window is the same as the original. And I do see the details of the edges of the easement and all that. But back to the chimney. Again, there were two chimneys in the home, the house. So we agreed not to build one out of the two. I understand the comment that was made in response for the owner, but I feel that the chimney somehow should be there because it's part of the original of the home. So somehow that should be reinstalled. Or another option should look at and work down on it. Somehow put an imitation of the chimney on the exterior as a non-function chimney. So that's another option that can be looked at by the owner as well. So that way, it may not be a function, but still a replica of that same feature of that original chimney could still be there. Remember, it was two chimneys there. We just told the owner we're just gonna look at one, but at least looking at that north elevation, something is still missing there. So I agree that chimney somehow should be restored. So I understand the finance of the owner, but somehow the owner should look at that. Another option is just to put something imitating a chimney there, but it's non-function. So that's how I feel a chimney should be there. But again, something should be shown at dawn, the light fixture. I didn't hear nothing on there. And the landscaping as well, shown to staff. So those are my comments.
Mr. Chair, I think you're muted.
Mr. Chair, you have Mr. Benezzi and
sorry.
Mr. Santora with their hands raised.
Okay, can we focus on the architectural aspects and leave the chimney out for 1 second, because it seems to be a very much, I mean, we will cover it, but not part of the, I want to make sure that
So,
all the architectural
Mr.
details.
Chair, if I can, we've been talking in very very vague generalities. Mr. Pettit put out this morning the list that was sent to the designer and the owner, which has the items discussed at the commission. And I just would, can we read them off so we can understand what the commission had asked for at the previous meeting? And then Mr. Began can.
I've already read them. I have them in front of me right now, and I think we're.
Right, but can we read them for the record?
Sure.
Would you like me to read them, or if Mr. Pettit wants to read them in? I pulled them up, so because I was.
You read them.
Okay, so the very first item was restore, reinstate, or maintain the original architectural details on at least 3 elevations of the house, north, east, and south, including the eave details, including rake board, fascia intersections and proportions, rosettes, horizontal, and scallop siding, aligned with sills and windows. Next item, restoration of the north chimney, including the color of the chimney. Next item, restore the locations and proportions of the original windows, as many as possible, pending interior conflicts. Show why you cannot. Next item, restore wood horizontal siding and scallops. There was some acceptance of hardy, but a feeling that wood cedar, wood parentheses cedar, would be better to achieve the original detailing, and a comment to study a more durable wood product. Next item, windows on north elevation should be aluminum clad wood based, on feedback regarding the importance of the north facade. Next item, finalize color scheme based on the feedback, light and dark grays and black window sash. Next item, confirm extent of changes to the garage. Next item, commission could compromise on the west elevation, but show how it is an integrated solution, e.g. window locations and proportions, parentheses, could eliminate T111 siding and addition. Next item, provide revised detailed drawings that reflect the above. End of items. So I think that gives us a good idea of what the commission had spoken to previously. And I believe Mr. Began was able to address a lot of those. But Mr. Began, if you could just go through and confirm that you did, in fact, go through those items and they are responded to in your drawings. We obviously know the chimney is not, but if you could address the other items, I think it would be beneficial for us moving forward. And I can understand the history of the project. I still don't believe that it alleviates any of the responsibility of the owners and designers to make sure that the proper process is followed. But since that was in the past and we're looking to move forward, I think we should come to a decision today and not postpone this any longer.
Thank you very much. I think Mr. Began has already commented on all those elements. And Ms. Anderson mentioned that she was satisfied with the changes that were made. It seems to me like we're pretty well in line with the architectural modifications, possibly with the exception of landscaping. The issue now is the chimney, which I would like to isolate, making sure that we're okay on all the architectural modifications.
Mr. Chair, you have Mr. Benezi and Ms. Anderson with their hands raised.
Mr. Benezi, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, thank you, Mr. Santor. You took the words out of my mouth. I had the list in front of me, and I just wanted to clarify and go through. And I think after leafing through everything, leafing through the drawings, leafing through our comments, everything has been picked up except for this chimney, which I know I'm going to keep out of the conversation for now. But other than that, which I agree with Ms. Anderson about, the only concern I still have, which truthfully, it's hard to do in this type of way of communicating because you really would have to sit down and like redline, is the exact detailing or drawn details of kind of like what these rosettes and what these like carvings are going to be. I think that's the only piece that is missing from this drawing document set. But the fact that it is noted out, the wood that it's noted in, and the way that it's like, as I zoom in, it is drawn very, very cleanly and accurately. I don't have too many concerns that it's going to be done correctly. But then there's the chimney question, but I'm going to leave that out. But I think given the situation, given the extent that the applicant has had to go through to get to this point, and I think the back and forth, I do think we have checked off almost everything that all of us have been asking for, that we've been, from the one side to the other. communicating through this long process. So I think we're almost there, except for this one last issue of the chimney.
Thank you, Ms. Bernanke. Are we all in agreement with that element? Or any other comments from the commission regarding those architectural features?
Mr. Chair, this is Bob Strickland. I believe that Ms. Anderson had her hand raised, but in the
Bob, I'll defer to you. You were, by all means,
okay.
I'd like to hear your comments.
So, Mr. Chairman, what I would add is the applicant has expressed frustration that he did not have this list, and essentially must have been going from memory with regard to his attempt
Well,
to establish the design details
well, the
to
list,
represent on the drawing.
yeah,
And so it's been my experience that the staff of the Landmarks Commission has always been very open and willing to work with all applicants,
yes.
sit down with them and review in detail the requirements of the commission in order for the applicant to satisfy the level of detailing and replacement of those critical design elements that we're looking for. So I still think it's important, given that the applicant has said that he hasn't seen this list, for him to confirm that indeed everything that is on this list has been addressed and the level of detailing is sufficient to ensure that the replacements will as closely as possible replicate the original design.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. I think, the comments were made at the last meeting in June included this list. It was not perhaps presented as a formal list, but the comments on the list were made. So if someone, including Mr. Began, was taking notes from that meeting, he would have had a list of our comments from the previous meeting. But having said that, I just wanted to make sure that we're okay with any further comments pertaining to the architectural features and details, so that we can put that to bed for 1 second and get to this chimney issue.
Mr. Chair, you have Ms. Anderson and Mr. Tarasik with their hands raised.
Ms. Anderson, please. Michelle, I can't hear you.
So sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm satisfied with the level of detail that's presented here. My comment was more a chimney comment, so I can wait until.
Okay, well, let's go to the chimney then, unless there are more comments. Go ahead, sorry.
Does Mr. Tarasik want to make a comment about the?
Yes, I would, and thank you very much for the time. I do agree with Mr. Strickland's comments, and I really do appreciate the chair parceling out the issues, if you will, between this list and the chimney. I guess my question would be, and we have gone back and forth with this, there does seem to be a level of understanding, but not necessarily complete and full understanding with respect to this list. Is there a way during this meeting right now that we can get a copy of that list to the applicant's representative just to review it? It's not a very long list, just to review it so that we have put down to a fine-tooth comb. I mean, it looks as though all of those particular issues absent the chimney have been addressed, and that's what we've been saying here, is that it looks like all of those things have been taken care of. Mr. Strickland's comments, though, I think are very well taken, that the Landmarks Commission and Mr. Pettit have always been very, very helpful with every single applicant here. If there was a way that that particular list could find its way to the representative right now, and since we are here and not getting back, can we do that? But I agree that it does. I agree that it does seem that they have all been done and addressed, absent the chimney. But just to put a fine-tooth point on this, is there a way that we can do something like that? Thank you.
Now, Mr. Chair, if I may interject, I think there's a little confusion by some of the committee members. So what had occurred at the June 10th meeting, we did meet. And again, at that meeting, I requested exactly what we are discussing right now, is that, and only because each committee that we'd been through Ohio City, I would take my notes, we would make the revisions, we'd send it in, and then at the next meeting there was, well, and we want this. So that's why I was so adamant at the June 10th meeting that we do have that list prepared. On July 12th, I received from Mr. Pettit that list. We made those revisions and we resubmitted it to Mr. Pettit based on that list he did provide to us on July 12th. So we have not
Which are reflected in
any
the-
additional review or comments back from staff. I believe he wanted this to go back before the committee. So that's where we're at. So just so you understand the process, there wasn't, it's not that we did not have this list. Mr. Pettit it's given it to us a little a month after our meeting.
Right.
And we were revised and resubmitted and asked for additional comment, but not Mr. Pettit wanted to have this appear before the committee. So that's why we're here, and that's where we got to, just so that there's no confusion to the rest of the committee.
I guess my only comment then is, and again, we are where we are here, but why didn't we begin this meeting with here's the list we received from the Landmarks Commission and addressing step by step those things that were addressed? It seems like that would have been a more efficient way of presenting this.
I think at the beginning I said I'm not exactly sure how to present this. Do we start with the list prepared to us? Do we have Mr. Pettit read the list? Do you want us to read the list? Do you want to do the presentation? I think that was exactly where I wanted to go, so we didn't have to waste this much time talking about process.
Thank you very much. I think we did cover the list at this point. Mr. Tarasik, any further comments? Are you okay?
No, I don't have any further comments, and I appreciate the chair, as I said, separating out these particular items from the chimney, and it sounds as though from the commission that there's a general consensus that those particular items have been at least satisfactorily addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, can we talk about the chimney at this point? The general consensus is that the chimney should be replaced. My question originally was that is there a foundation there? And if we are talking about replacing the chimney, then we need to replace it not in some imitative materials, but an actual brick as it had been previously done, right?
Giancarlo, if that's a question, Mr. Chair, I would say absolutely. There's no point in replacing that chimney unless it's done
The original
traditional brick.
Okay. So then Mr. Began made a comment that it could cost $80,000. Did you say 80,000 or was that just?
An additional $15,000 to replace the chimney, noting that the project to date is $80,000 over the original construction, due mostly to the exterior renovations that he's had to incur. So he's 80,000 over his budget, and it would be an additional 15,000 above that to do the restoration of the chimney.
All right, my personal comments regarding budgets are I'm very skeptical about budgets because they're created out of the blue in some cases. I mean, one buys a building in a historical district that needs to comply with the conditions of the historical district. If the budget was $60,000 and now it's 80, I can't deal with that situation. My question is, as far as the chimney is concerned, aside from the actual cost, which seems like to do how high is it going, 5 or 6 feet?
I would have to take a look at the photos that we have and count some brick to be able to tell you that. Yes, okay. It's approximately 5 or 6 feet.
All right. So my view is that if the commission will continue to insist on replacing this chimney, then it should be done in the original materials, with the original materials, which is currently brick. Its cost obviously is really not part of this conversation, quite honestly. So I think the reason I wanted to separate it because maybe we should take a quick vote regarding the replacement of the chimney. If the commission wants a chimney replaced, then it will be part of the conditions of this particular meeting. I think we're satisfied with the architectural changes you've made, and I praise you for that. I mean, Paul, you're in a difficult situation because it is a rather confusing project, and the house was in bad shape, and some of the original conditions were not even there to really review. However, we are dealing with a project that we all want to be happy at its conclusion. And the chimney now is the main issue. Any further comments regarding Mr. Santoro? Your comments on the chimney, please. Again.
Thank you. I do see Miss Anderson and Mr. Strickland have their hand raises,
Oh,
but I'll be very brief. I think everybody knows my opinion.
Yes, okay.
I feel like the chimney should be restored. I can understand the cost associated with that, but the remainder of the chimney remained, and it was just removed down to the portion so that they could install a new roof.
Yes.
And if they are replacing the chimney like they should be, like was mentioned at the last meeting from the commission, then it should be in the proper materials in brick, and the rest of the chimney should be restored either back to the brick color that it naturally was. But at least the replacement of the chimney should happen.
You're also talking about the fireplace that's been covered over, the chimney?
I think it was just painted because Mr. Beacon, you could correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like in the drawings the chimney below the eave line is still remaining completely. It's just been painted again, right?
It's been painted.
Again, let me ask the committee if they're asking us to restore masonry that has been painted for, it may be 80 years. Is that the intent of this committee, to require the owner to remove the paint and restore that brick? Because I can tell you, I've tried to remove paint from brick before. It's going to look 10 times worse than it does right now.
In my opinion, that's why I said painted back to the original color. If it from the images we're seeing on screen right now, it was painted before construction began.
Yes.
I have no issue. I would like to see it restored back to its original brick color, but understanding that it was painted before, I'm okay with it still remaining the paint. If it wants to be repainted to a color to match some of the detailing or color scheme that you're doing, I think that would be okay, but we would have to be able to see that and see necessarily how it looks. Above the roof line, I would like to see the brick restored and be maintained as brick. I don't think it would be appropriate to paint the brick, especially if it is going to be new, and especially if it wasn't painted before.
Thank you, Mr. Santoro. Can we hear from Mrs. Anderson, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Some of these questions that I had have just been answered. Regarding the portion of the chimney that's missing above the roof line, would it be possible, instead of building a chimney, to create a box and use a like a thinner face brick that completely mimics a real genuine thick brick, and just use that face brick to cover that box? I believe they used a face brick, and I might be wrong, on that renovation of the church that St. Ignatius did, the church on West 30th. And it turned out beautifully. I would think that that kind of material would be much cheaper, and it would be much cheaper to install and apply. So it would definitely reduce the cost from any kind of $15,000 outlay. So I don't know if that might be something worth exploring, or if that'd be something the committee would be open to moving forward with. Thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a couple of issues that I would like to discuss. One, with regard to the chimney, I'm looking at one of the photos of the existing house, and the chimney that I'm looking at shows corbelling at the top of the chimney, and I think that would have to be replaced as well, replicated as well in the replacement chimney. So I'm of the opinion that the material needs to be brick and that the features of that chimney be reconstructed as though it had not been removed at all. That's my opinion. The next
Thank you,
issue I
Mr.
have for the
Strickland.
applicant is this, I've got a planning and zoning question. How many units are planned for this property in total?
The house itself has 4 units. The garage has 1 unit. That was the existing addition prior to the owner purchasing it. It has been reviewed by zoning and approved, as well as the building department. And again, we were issued a permit for the renovation of the house and garage.
Okay, because I pulled up the county records and it indicates that this area is zoned as a 2-family and that this house is platted as a 2-family. So typically, if a zoning variance had been issued, that would be reflected in the county documents. But you're saying that you've gone through that process and the zoning variance is not
We
required?
did not need a variance because the house has been an existing 4-family plus 1 unit and accessory structure.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure that that was the case. Thank you.
Interesting point, Mr. Strickland. Thank you so much. Other comments from the commission regarding the chimney before I make my comments? Okay, thank you. My comments are actually in agreement with the idea of restoring the chimney as it was originally. It's a critical feature to a house. And now that I found out that it's a 4 or 5 unit complex, that all the more so because, you know, as far as the economics are concerned, I think a 4 or 5 unit apartment, the few $1,000s are required to put in the original chimney back in place. I think we're okay with all the architectural changes you've made, Mr. Began, and I praise you for that. That it's obviously been a difficult project, but I am in agreement with the comments we're getting to the chimney. I think I'd like to see it restored as it was in the original materials. And if there are any further comments, I would like to get a motion placed. And Mr.
Sorry,
Strickland,
this is
Go ahead.
Mike Yap, the
Yes.
owner of the property.
yeah,
I'm apologizing that I'm late. I was never sent the link actually to the WebEx. Are we now voting on the property? Is that what?
We're about ready to
getting
accept a
to vote on
motion,
it, yes.
Michael.
Yeah, we don't have a motion yet, but yes, we are getting ready to vote.
All right. And is the voting going to be that we would approve? Is that the direction that we're going?
We don't have a motion yet, but right now we have discussed all the architectural requests that were made by the commission at the last meeting, which seem to have been complied with. I repeatedly asked comments regarding to that. I think we're satisfied with the architectural changes and requests that were made. I wanted to separate the chimney. We now have covered the chimney. It looks like the committee is requesting, even though it's not formal yet, that the chimney should be replaced with the original materials.
I see. I think that, and I apologize. I mean, the name under your screen says Michelle, but I don't. I just your last comment on the chimney and the ability for 4 or 5 units to accommodate the additional expense. I would like to just highlight some of the practical impact of some of the comments that we've received over time, including the delay over time, which has been about a 6-month delay throughout the review process. As Paul, I'm sure
Well, just to comment on that, I don't think that the delay was caused by landmarks. I think there were other circumstances that caused those delays. So I think that comment is
Well,
appreciated.
I think it's just more about the overall. And I want to be clear that in each step of the process, both with Ohio City Design Review and with landmarks, while we've had, as you can imagine, some other challenges with respect to trying to meet the requests at each of the meetings, starting in March, we had agreed to do whatever it is that was in plan and or was requested at each step. I mean, in the last Landmarks Commission meeting, which was 2 months ago, that we agreed to do that. We were waiting for a little bit of time from specific guidance from the secretary, so there was a little bit of a delay as a result of that. I'm mentioning this because while the few $1,000s of related to a restoring a chimney that was in disrepair, as was the entire home, would be within a few $1,000s would be something that could be managed. The totality of the changes that have been made to the original plan. And again, through each of the stages of starting in March, we had accepted what has been requested, made the changes as requested by Ohio City Design Review, to come back and then be asked to add additional things. In Ohio City Design Review, we were approved without the chimney, but that's not because there weren't other changes. Along with the delays, the changes themselves have added easily $60,000 to the project. The delay itself has added another $30,000 to the project. So what would take even a 5-unit, this is a relatively small project on a unit basis, but it's almost a $100,000 overall cost adjustment. Now, I'm a very small project builder. I tried our best for reasons that I don't want to rehash, but there was, I'm hopeful I would have the committee's benefit of the doubt that there was not intention here to do things outside of the ordinary course, but there were certain extenuating circumstances that we left ourselves, especially during a period of COVID in 2020 with uncertainty as to other things in terms of timing. We did the best that we could. I also point out that at least in this particular house's case, we took a house that was in significant disrepair. That is, the previous owner admitted to me himself that it was about 30 years in disrepair. That he couldn't. So
I completely agree with you. I mean, whenever you get involved in a restoration project, there are hundreds of details and circumstances that you cannot foresee.
Yes.
I've done many projects of that nature, and the budget is actually an item that's as floatable as a boat on water, because you never know what you're getting into in a house that's been neglected for many, many years. However, I want also to let you know that we're not here to punish anybody. We don't want a chimney restored or the house restored in a certain way because we like to punish someone who's made this great effort, as you have, to do a project in an historical district. Also, I'd like to make the comment that the chimney, I mean, a good mason could probably put that chimney up in 3 or 4 days. I'm not sure that the costs are as high as you may think, but in an historical district, chimneys are part of a tradition. It's a tradition that goes back thousands of years, not just 100 years, as in the case of Cleveland. And I obviously don't want you to spend any more money, but we need to make sure that these projects are done in a proper historical fashion.
So what I'm wondering is if this chimney, we would like, if we're, I understand the point that there are additional expense on chimney, not chimney, sorry, projects that are in the historical district. In this particular house's case, it was in 30 years of disrepair. I also want to point out that this house shares an alley with an auto repair lot, a used car lot, a tattoo
Yes, I
parlor,
know.
a tattoo parlor that the previous owner tells me has repeatedly uses fires off guns in the alley. I think that what I'm trying to do is appeal to the commission's reasonableness on the fact that there's already been additional. This is not this is, to describe this as a restoration project is to describe it in a way that I don't think this is exactly a restoration project as much as it is a rehabilitation and renovation project. And we're doing our best because we're in a historic district. We have made significant adjustments to our plan to the tune of, as I had mentioned, $50,000 to $60,000 plus an additional time cost as it relates to this approval process. And when it comes to the chimney itself, the height of the chimney, the risk of water intrusion in the chimney, the inability to maintain a full envelope of green standards in order to keep drafts and other air out of the home. I mean, there are other aspects that are very practical ones. And in fact, the fact that it is a 4 or 5 unit, sorry, I should say a 5-unit property, I wanted it to be something that wouldn't have an extenuatingly. The chimney was in disrepair, as was the entire house. I viewed it as a risk for crumbling and other issues. So it's not that I'm disregarding the value of the historic district. It's that I'm trying to help the committee understand that I'm in a neighborhood that the chimney is just one more thing that I find both frustrating and extremely painful. And when I see what's happening with around the neighbors, and I've been advised by others that have been I've been relying on advisors to me as well, that this treatment of this project has undergone this scrutiny that has not been applied to any other project.
Oh, no, I don't agree with that. I think the word that you use is scrutiny. I think we look at every project in the historic district with equal scrutiny. I don't think we picked, yours is somewhat circumstantial or different because things were done from the very beginning that really were inappropriately done and not in compliance with certain city requirements. But I don't think we're doing anything particularly scrutinizing in your case. I started my conversation earlier actually by speaking the condition or the foundation of the chimney, because if the foundation of the chimney is fine, then all you have to do is cap it. If the foundation is seriously damaged, as was the rest of the house, then we have the additional issue of possibly rebuilding the chimney from ground up because the foundation may not support a cap to it, which is another issue that Mr. Beacon, you said that the foundation, the remaining of the chimney up to the roof line is in good condition structurally. So it could take this additional 4 or 5 feet of height without problems.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Santori has his hand raised.
Sorry?
Mr. Santori has his hand raised.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, given the testimony that we've heard from the applicant and the owner, as well as the comments from the commission, I would like to put forward a motion that we approve the project with the following conditions. The first condition, that the applicant work with staff in verifying that the trim details on the 3 primary facades of the house are replicated in correct proportionality and detail. The second condition, that the chimney on the north side of the facade, the north front side of the facade, be fully restored above the roof line including the restoration of the corbelline details that were included in the original design. The chimney below the roof line can remain painted or be repainted following a color scheme that is appropriate for the building and submitted to staff. And that the third condition be that the applicant submit to staff landscaping details for the property for approval. And the fourth condition, that the garage be approved as presented.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Bailey. Thank you so much. Will the secretary call for a vote, please?
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Bonezzi, I think you're muted. Okay, thank you.
Hello?
That's a yes.
Yes. Sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Kalikia,
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer,
Yes.
Mr. Santora,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to everyone for the hard work we put into this project, and I look forward to its completion.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, the next project on the list is case 21-0060, Franklin West Clinton Historic District, the driveway and curb cut at 5602 Franklin Boulevard.
Sorry, this is my first time through the process. I appreciate your patience and your guidance. Is it my go? Do we need to do any other procedural stuff?
No, go ahead with your presentation.
Mr. Chairman, this was removed from the agenda at the last meeting at the applicant's request, and the commission tabled it. We procedurally need to take it off the table.
Okay. Will someone make a motion to that regard, please?
This is
Bob
Michelle.
Strickland, I'll move to take the application from the table.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Call for a vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Kalikia,
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer,
Yes.
Mr. Santora,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik.
Yes.
The item is placed back, taken off the agenda, taken off the table. I'm sorry. It's been a long
Thank
morning.
you.
Yeah.
Please proceed with the presentation.
Thank you very much, and good morning. I really appreciate your patience. I know it's been a long morning already. I'll try and move quickly.
Good, thank you.
Yeah. So this is a proposal for a driveway that would go back beyond the house line, but not continue all the way to the back of the property. It's been a long time in the making. We moved into our house in 2013, and that's when I first started investigating what parking solutions we could adapt. I talked to Mr. Pettit at that time. I'm trying to address the fact that there's a rear access way you could see pictured behind our property. We're there in the middle, and the rear access way really doesn't provide parking. It did when we first moved in. It doesn't provide adequate parking at this point, which I'll go over in a minute. And so we've been parking on Franklin for the past 7+ almost 8 years now, and I've encountered like the type of safety concerns that you might expect, particularly on somewhere like Franklin Boulevard. I don't know if you drive it frequently, but there are a lot of accidents and speeding on Franklin. The speed limit's 35 miles an hour, and there are a lot of efforts to try and calm traffic. And there's a big proposal going through now to make the street safer. but we're really trying to address this parking situation, both not really having access to the thing that was once accessible for us, and then trying to make our family safer. Anecdotally, things like being able to charge an electric vehicle would be really nice as well, but that's not right down the middle of what we're trying to do here. So I think what this proposal is really an equitable way to kind of remove this hardship without damaging the character of the neighborhood or its walkability, and I'll walk you through that. So on the second slide, you can see a rough sketch of what it is I'm looking to construct that would go along the side of the house. It would create just approximately a 9-foot space, 8 feet 10 inches by my measurement, and I'm trying to fully validate that with a boundary survey, though I haven't gotten anybody to come out to the property yet. I'm on the schedule, which they seem to be scheduling pretty far out. But boundary surveys were done for the fences that were in place, I'm told, and so I'm using that as my measure at the moment. It leaves.
May I ask a question? So the proposed driveway obviously is where that corner of the fence is now?
The proposed driveway, yes. Yeah, so the corner of where that fence is, there's actually a chain link fence that comes up on the outside of that. I'm using the chain link fence, but it's a matter of inches at that point, like somewhere between 3 and 3 inches.
It's right along the house then?
Yeah, slightly beyond that fence line where it ends. This proposal has been approved by the Franklin West Clinton Design Review Board on July 7th. I don't think anybody is here from that review board, but I do have their report up. But if at any point you would like me to read what they said, that it was approved at a 5-1 vote. And I have support specifically from my neighbor to the west. I have a letter of support from that neighbor for the project. The neighbor to the east, that property right now is, I believe, going to the probate court. So there's really no one to get approval from, but it is something I had been talking about for years. I had talked about my neighbor just passed away a couple months ago. So it's something I had talked about with her, but with everything with COVID, we really wasn't moving very quickly on that. But unfortunately, she has now passed away, and her children are trying to get control of that property, and they've pretty much told me that they live out of state, and they're just trying to sell it to somebody who could get them the most cash up front.
So are we looking north at this house right now? Okay.
Yeah.
So the neighbor to the right is your east neighbor.
That's correct.
Correct. Okay. And you have that neighbor's approval.
Now, I have the neighbor to the west approval, and the neighbor to the east, the house that you can see in the picture, is the property is going through probate court right now. And so that's, yeah. So as it said on that last one, I think it gives 9 feet and roughly 2 to 3 inches of space between where I'm looking to construct and that house to get to.
That's the minimum, isn't it? For the city of Cleveland, what's the minimum?
I believe 10 feet it would be a variance, because 10 feet is the requested, is from what I heard.
Yeah.
So I'm, about 10 inches short of what the minimum is. So I would be seeking a variance after this for that.
Okay.
Just a bit of a background about the unique rear accessway situation. There's a partial accessway that only services, really, there's a property that's to the north that's tucked back away in there. And then there's my neighbor to the east or to the right in that earlier photo, and our property. It really only works with them. My sense is that it's evolved over time. There's now a front door to a second floor apartment that comes right back out into that accessway. So people are walking in and out directly behind our property. Children are playing sort of in that accessway. At this point, you can see a picture on the bottom left. And so when we first moved in, this is how parking was arranged. But both the angles of trying to park, because my neighbor in the past 20 years has also constructed a 2-car garage along it, right up onto the access way, creates really difficult angles. And even with those angles, if we were to build something that takes up, approximately 50% of the backyard to make it work, this still doesn't address the fact that there are people, that's someone's front door that we're reversing into at that point. It's really narrow at that
This driveway we're looking at right now is on the west side of your house, right?
This is to the north of my house. Sorry, I didn't make that clear. So this comes off of 57th Street.
Okay.
And you turn behind the properties, including mine there. There's an easement for the city for the construction of it. And you can see kind of like what the boundary lines are. I grabbed that image off of the My Place portal for Cuyahoga County. So there's this narrowness of the alley. There's this limited visibility and the way that it's used by other properties, which I think has adapted over time. I don't know how long that stoop has existed prior to my moving in. I know that in the process of looking at it with the design review committee, they were wondering whether that was a legal construction or not, but none of that really is for me to say. At this point it exists and I have to work with what is currently there. So we're not really able to use this access way for any significant parking. And that's what was arranged that's how it was arranged when we first moved in. So we chose to, for privacy and safety reasons, have a fence up. We put a fence along there and we started parking on the street for the past 7 years, trying to monitor if we could, have the parking solution another way. And so I've talked to city planning, and I've talked to Landmarks and the Detroit Shoreway Community Development Organization on this for years now. So this is kind of like the proposals that came out of that, the best thing. As far as the variances that you were mentioning, or you brought up the idea of a variance, this is my understanding is that there are 2 specific ordinances in question. I know that this doesn't seem like it's the issue of the day about granting a variance, but just to make you aware of what's been part of the conversation in case you're not up on that, that there be 10 feet between construction, I guess, also of a driveway, of not just necessarily structures, is from what I'm hearing. This would be a 10-inch variance of that, and that parking is in the back 50% of the lot is another ordinance. And so while these would require variances, I guess what I'm going to take you through after this is that I believe there is a lot of variations in terms of how parking is actually done in our historic district, and that what I'm proposing isn't actually a deviation from how parking is laid out or enjoyed in my neighborhood, while it may require, variances to have it done technically. So I just isolated 4 specific properties and sort of the more immediate area, just to give you a sense of what the character is of the neighborhood. This is across the street on the south side of the block, parking alongside of the house, which their property is pretty shallow. I grabbed another screenshot off of the My Place portal. That property is shallower, so that car, I believe, would be within the context of the back 50%. When the second car parks there, which often happens, it is not by nature. And that the depth of this isn't that different than what I'm asking for. If there are concerns about walkability or being too close to the sidewalk. I took this walk around an evening in my neighborhood to try and give an honest assessment of parking. And at no point any of these properties was there like infringement on the sidewalk, or it didn't diminish walkability at all. So yeah, I guess the next one is on the very next block on the north side, 5706 Franklin Boulevard. This house I'm including because it shows how houses are constructed and driveways are constructed in variation or from that ordinance as it is. There's clearly not, this driveway goes directly to the neighbor's house, and cars park here in a way that, like, they're right up on that house and have to open their driver's side door to get out. There's often 2 cars parked here, and so they come back directly to the property line, which is only, a matter of feet off of the sidewalk. So this is just on the very next block. When you drive through the neighborhood or walk through the neighborhood, I think you see examples that are very akin to what I'm asking for. This is West Clinton, and this is West Clinton. So this property, it's very clear that there are 2 driveways actually constructed, from what I can tell. I don't have access to the historical permits and construction of it. There are 2 driveways constructed that are both on the front 50% of the property. 2 cars parked on the left-hand side, within 10 feet of the house to the west, and then the one on the right also doesn't even go far as deep. And I've definitely heard concerns in earlier years about what would be parked in those driveways. This person has a trailer truck parked along the side of the house, which I'm not asking anybody to allow me to park a trailer truck. I'm just saying, this is also part of the character of the neighborhood that's parked there for a large part of the year. I think they've tried to make it blend in as much as possible, but there's another car that parks in front of that space, pretty much, very closer to the sidewalk, though still not diminishing the walkability of the neighborhood. Then the next property is just two lots further west, and this is a unique property in that the house is for our neighborhood, and that the house is situated all the way to the rear of the property, but the parking only, goes about 25 feet deep into the lot, and so parking definitely happens always in the front 50% of the lot, and that's just part of the character of the neighborhood. So that was just a quick walkthrough for specific properties. The next 4 slides are just to give a little broader view of when you walk around the property, walk around the neighborhood, the kind of what you see in terms of how people typically park. These 2 highlight what you see a lot, which is sort of semi-permanent fencing. There's a driveway that goes to the rear, but there's a fence put up that is not opened and closed on any normal basis. It just seems like people have it. They fenced in their private backyard, and then they enjoy their parking on the side of their house beyond the property line, which is, I think, how my proposal would look, because there would be a 6-foot fence right after the driveway that you wouldn't necessarily know that, I couldn't pull it further. I just wouldn't be. Then there's also, the realistic way people enjoy their parking around the neighborhood. And I put this in here again, not because I plan on parking on the grass in my front yard, but just to show that there's a wide way in which parking is enjoyed in the neighborhood, and none of it diminishes the walkability of the neighborhood. No one is on the sidewalk, from what I could tell walking around.
Well, again, I think, my comments are that parking in these historical neighborhoods is always an issue, as it is, for example, in Fremont, where you have some driveways that are barely over 9 feet. I think you've proven the need for a driveway for your home. I'm not quite sure, what position we can take as landmarks, when I believe that what the major issues really with compliant codes. Mr. Pettit, do you have any comments regarding that statement?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did run this by the zoning section in city planning, and Kyle Reese gave us this response to it. He did cite the 2 parts of the code that would be in violation if this were approved. That's part of Mr. McPartland's presentation. He also added, in my experience, BZA almost never grants those variances, and I've never advocated that either of those provisions receive a variance. Providing the driveway to a spot that is not in the rear almost always in practice ends up with cars parking in the front yard and or across the sidewalk completely contrary to the city's walkability goals. There is no legal right to an off-street parking spot, and therefore there is no hardship.
Thank you.
We're here today because this is an exterior change to a property in a historic district. Ultimately, it's going to be up to the Board of Zoning Appeals to determine if a variance can be granted here. But you know, we have to take into account the code in our deliberation on the physical change here, and we have to decide if this amounts to a change in the character. I think in a change to the character of the district that's adverse to the rest of the neighborhood. That would be my take on it.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Davenport from City Planning is here.
So, please, Mr. Davenport.
Good morning. Sorry, I joined late. Adam Davenport. I'm a staff planner here with the Planning Commission, and I can just Mr. Pettit echoed my colleague Kyle's comments succinctly, but I'll kind of reiterate a couple since I do attend BZA every Monday. So those we see these cases every so often. They are almost always denied for driveways in the front setback. It not only is it against the zoning code for parking in the first half of the lot, but it's also on the books as well in the building department for parking near windows and near your house as well. And obviously that takes place in different fashions around town and in the neighborhoods, but that's the essence of kind of that rule. The kind of the or not subconscious, the kind of like sub-related goals of that rule is definitely related to walkability and you know the city's pedestrian and other kind of mode environment, whether it's bicycling or otherwise. So I think Kyle's comments are succinct on kind of what those situations create, but you know, this would end up at Board of Zoning Appeals as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from the commission?
Do you mind if I make a comment? I'm sorry, I realize it might be out of.
No, please.
I know. I guess essentially what I'm asking the commission for today is permission to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals, and albeit a long shot. Like it seems like it's their purview to tell me that the variances I'm asking for are not going to be granted. But I guess just speaking to the rationale, I guess what I was going for in the presentation, there were 2 more slides on it, but it's more of the same. I took a walk around my neighborhood in the evening. None of the parking layouts, many of which are very similar to what I'm asking for, diminish the walkability of the neighborhood at all. So I can't speak for everybody's experience, but I can speak for my neighborhood, that I don't see that as strongly a connection. And I don't know how much that weighs on this committee's like this mind as they're looking at this. And I also I'm not suggesting that you know, this parking proposal is the hardship is because there's a right to parking. It's more of if I could increase the enjoyment and safety of my property without diminishing the property, or you know, without harming the character, or if I have the support of my neighbors and the design review committee, that I feel like I'm not suggesting that there's a hardship that's based on a right not being enjoyed or something like that.
Thank you. I would like to say, look, you know, it would definitely make living conditions at your home a serious improvement. Again, parking in historical districts is always an issue. Mr. Pettit's comments regarding the aesthetics of a driveway at an historical home. I mean, all those are comments that are very much appreciated. But I still do believe that you should have a driveway in your home, and then I think I would like to hear comments from members of the commission. But I don't have a problem approving this project personally, and as chair. But then I guess we have to deal with the city.
Mr. Chair, you have Mr. Santor and Mr. Benezi with their hands raised.
Mr. Santower, please.
Actually, Mr. Benezi, if you want to go first, that's fine. I know I've been doing a lot of talking, so go ahead.
Mr. Bush.
Thank you. I want to echo my support for the applicant because I think what could really help get the point across is if you look at this from Google Maps, which is my favorite thing to keep up during these meetings. And if I'm counting correctly, the only people without driveways are you and your two adjacent neighbors.
I think that's right.
In the block. It's just the three of you. Oh, and this one house catty corner to you. So
my neighbor, sorry to interrupt, Jonathan. My neighbor to the west has a garage off of 57. So he kind of like,
I see. It's a part of that big street curb cut. So now we're down to three. And I think it's conditional the fact of like you're on Franklin Boulevard, which is a road that I know pretty well. Right, you're not on one of like the side court streets, or you're not in kind of one of the weird alleyways. It is a pretty large street, and I would agree with you that kind of, especially in the weird condition that you've been placed of like you have to park your car behind your house, but then there's the fence, so you have to walk all the way around the thing, and then trying to find that on-street parking. I really have no problem seeing you have a parking spot in front of your house, and I don't think it diminishes, in my personal opinion of the aesthetics of the house, to diminish the character of it, especially since you're being so sensitive to the size and really basically limiting to like just what you need, right? There's no excessiveness to the thing that you're asking for. So I kind of give full personal support based pending the other commission members' thoughts and opinions on it, but that would be my take on getting you this driveway. Ultimately, though, it is the Board of Zoning Appeals. I think that would be your next step. That's just how it is. So, but those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Bernanke. Mr. Santower, would you like to make a comment?
Yes, thank you. I can appreciate Mr. Benezi's comments, and my question to the applicant would be: do you have a site plan which illustrates the existing property lines and the demarcation between your property and your adjacent neighbor? I see you there, but it's obviously not correct. Otherwise, it looks like most of your driveway would be on your neighbor's property.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm wondering if you can go back to your existing site plan that you have. You're asking for a substandard drive width, and most of those, if not all of those examples that you had shown, the driveway at least extends, if not all the way to the back of the property to a garage, at least to the back of the domicile. And here you're not even getting halfway due to the projecting bay that you have. And I know you talked about you wanted to have fencing for demarcation between your property and the adjacent property. Well, if you're building your 8'10" all the way up to your property line, that driveway is not really 8'10" because you're going to take away obviously some a couple inches for your fencing. So I'm wondering how usable it will actually be. I tend to agree with Kyle and with Adam that to me, there's really not a hardship for you. You've stated that you've been living 7 years at the residence, and you guys have been parking out front. There does seem to be rear access to the back of your parcel through the shared drive that's to the north. And I understand that it is a little tight and maybe not the most convenient, but I would really kind of like to see, because from that image, there's also, I can't tell, is that tree on your lawn or your neighbor's lawn?
That tree in the corner right there?
Yeah.
That's on the corner of our lot, but it is mostly dead.
Is it mostly dead? Okay. So it'll be coming down anyways. But I would like to see it in a little bit more context in terms of the site layout of your building. your house. But I still do not see the hardship need to be able to put a driveway here, especially since you do have access to the back of the lot.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Chair.
Chair.
Ms. Anderson,
Am I
you're next.
speaking? Yeah, okay, I'm
Yes.
next. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Mr. Bonezzi. This property being without a driveway is an issue. I've been selling real estate for a long time, and you're looking at a house that's over 2,000 square feet. There's going to be several people living there. Odds are very, very good. Somebody's going to have a vehicle, and in the next 10 years, it's probably going to be an electric vehicle that's going to need to be charged. I used to live on Franklin Boulevard. For 10 years, I walked dogs on Franklin Boulevard. I never recall having an issue with a curb cut as a pedestrian walking dogs every day in that neighborhood. So I don't see that that's going to be an issue in the future. Some of the examples cited by the applicant of parking in the setback, I'm familiar with those properties, and the drives do not extend beyond the house. You are parking at the side of the house. Some of those photos are a little deceiving because the properties actually belong to the adjacent neighbor. So but some of these places you are parking at the setback, and I totally agree. I think it is a hardship. I realize that the city has an idealized view of what the community should be, and we're all going to be walking or biking or whatever. But this is Cleveland. We have Cleveland winters. We have huge rainstorms like we just experienced an hour ago. Vehicles are going to be with us. With the advent of more electric vehicles, they're going to need to be charged, and it'll also make the electric vehicles will make our environment greener. So I think people are going to be gravitating towards them. So I do support the applicant in this, and I wish you all the luck in the world with the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Any other comments from the commission?
Mr. Chair, we have Ms.
Thank you.
Bailey with her hand raised.
Who is it?
Ms. Bailey has her hand raised.
Okay.
Yes. I've heard a comment that this property seemed to have access from the rear. Could you show on this photo where? Oh, I see.
Yeah, if you go to the next one, it's documented a little more closely. Sorry, yeah. So there's an access way that you would turn into from 57th. That's currently in the screenshot there, being used as a driveway, coincidentally right now by the property to the north on 57th. There's cars idling and parked there. But my main issue was, I think Mr. Santora mentioned that it's, I believe it's more than inconvenient. I think there's a lack of safety going on with this access way because, again, there's a front door pictured right there. There are people who are constantly kind of in this alleyway, which is 9 feet 8 inches at where that stoop is. So I think I have real concerns that go beyond convenience.
And Park, could you go back to the other photo? No, not that one. With the 3 houses. Now, which home is yours? And the one in the middle?
Yes.
So from that access where those 2 cars is, can you get directly through there?
Can I get through there to my property in the middle? If those cars,
I see a house right there. Can you get directly there? From
Yeah.
those, where those two cars are?
that access way does go past my property. With those cars there, no, obviously they would have to be moved in that hypothetical scenario. There would have to be no cars, or like one of those cars would have to be moved in order to make some kind of parking layout possible in the backyard of the property. As I mentioned, that's when we first moved in. That was sort of the situation. It was very narrow. It required the use of, at that time, it was like 70 maybe % of the backyard was dedicated to trying to like essentially turn around in the backyard just to try and pull out. But there were, again, safety concerns that there were people walking in and out of the door right there, and there were kids playing in this access way, combined with the low visibility because of that garage that goes right up to the sidewalk pretty much of my neighbor. I'm not sure if that answered your question, Ms. Bailey.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm trying to visualize vehically, can you drive or create the drive on from that point to your home? So you answer my question, no, you can't do that. And I'm quite sure you looked at that.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if there's any other way. And there was a good question from Mr. Santel about looking at the property line just to see where exactly the property line goes. But I wish you were with the zoning appeal just to see how this can work in your benefit and putting that driveway on the side of your home.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. My comments are, as I said before, I think we should have a driveway. It's a great convenience. And there are many driveways all over Franklin Boulevard, so it's not something unique or unusual. So you have my support, but obviously you have to deal with the city of Cleveland, which is a whole different issue. So if there are no other comments, I would like to call for a motion.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Dryer has his hand raised.
Mr. Dryer.
I'll make the motion to approve this certificate of appropriateness as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I will second that motion.
Thank you. Mr. Patton, would you call for a vote, please?
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Santora,
No.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the motion passes 7-1.
Thank you very much. All was well for you, Mr. McPartland. So
Thank
our next case, you're welcome. Thank you. Is the Agora concept plan, case 21056. And I guess we have LDA making the presentation.
Yes, thank you. I'm Jesse with LDA. I'm the project manager on this one. So we presented for conceptual approval last month, and we went through Euclid Design Corridor, got final approval from them with no additional comments. Just to kind of refresh everyone's memory, this is a historical tax credit project. And includes the tower, which you kind of see to the left of this historical photo, the two wings, the east and west wing, which are closer to the photo. And then there's a portion of the tower that's on the north side of the Agora Theater. The Agora Theater itself is a separate ownership. This photo here is from our period of significance, which is during the era of WHK radio. And that's kind of what our design criteria and our design inspiration is coming from. If you want to go to the next slide. These are some existing photos of the courtyard. To the left is what we call the west wing, to the right is the east wing, which is, and then to the top of the pictures is the main tower. Then you can see the existing canopy and some of the existing murals inside the courtyard. Go to the next one, please. Here are some more photos of what the back of the building currently looks like, and the back of the tower and where the masonry is painted and not painted. I can go to the next slide. Here's the overall site plan for the first part of this. Again, for this review, we're looking at the renovations of the east wing elevations and then painting the full south facade where you saw the green, orange, and white checkerboard pattern, as well as the painted portions of what is the west tower and the east tower. Then there's some courtyard landscaping against the east wing that we're also updating, including a little bit more hardscape and new plantings. The canopy as it is there will remain as is. That's in the middle of the courtyard. If you want to go to the next slide. This is just a reference plan for the converting the east wing, which was the former recording studios for WHK and WMS radio stations. So this is just kind of a reference plan for how we're updating and converting this into a usable office space. Part of our historical tax credit program is one of our criteria is to provide very minimal window openings to the exterior. And therefore, we're providing several skylights to get more natural light into the space. Want to go to the next slide? There's the roof plan showing the number of skylights. This also includes a new penthouse that goes up to a roof deck on top of the east wing. The penthouse will be clad in thin brick veneer that will also get painted to match the west tower painted brick. And this is part of our SHPO and historical tax credit review on how that gets clad and treated. The next image, please. That's just a little axon diagram of the courtyard and the east wing and its relationship to the rest of the building. I can go to the next slide. This is the west elevation of the east wing. In the middle, there where you see the punched window openings. Again, because this was a recording studio and it was more of an insular space, the type of windows and the number of windows we could put on the west facade was relatively limited and heavily critiqued by our State Preservation Office. For the south elevation where it says the Agora signage on the front, that is the existing ephes that will be repaired and repainted. The signage will remain as is for now. There's a possibility of future phases of signage will be new, but that will be a separate presentation. You can also see the elevation of the penthouse in that south facade too. Again, that gets clad in the thin brick veneer that gets painted to match the rest of the tower. Right now, there are no proposed window openings on the east elevation of the east wing, as that faces the alley, the emergency egress alley for the Agora Theater. Go to the next slide. Thank you. And this is just a broader south elevation of the east and west tower. You can kind of see in the white in the background there where there's a downspout and where the Agora marquee sign is. That's roughly the line of where the east tower gets painted up to. The chimney and the penthouse on the taller tower will get painted, and the painting stops right below the second floor windows, right below where the fire escape is, and then goes to natural brick, which is where how it's painted now. You can go to the next slide. Here's the rendering and then the actual paint colors that are proposed for the project. The WHK paint scheme and coatings will remain the same, as that's a separate ownership group. But the rest of it, the south face of the tower, the south facing elevations of the east and west wing, and will get painted the Roykoff copper red. The inside of the courtyard will be the Westchester gray. And then the lighter, the Chelsea gray is the banding columns on the south facade of the wings in the back. The new window colors will be the light bronze anodized color, and that will also be the same for the skylight frame color as well. And then that's the view from Prospect Avenue. And then just another close-up of the tower where you can see where the transitions from the existing brick material to what would be the new painted Roykoff red. I think one of the questions we got asked during our last Euclid design corridor is just where the paint stops and starts. And basically we're matching the existing paint line of what was there originally. So I believe it wraps around the chimney to the left, it wraps around there and then terminates at a brick joint where the two different brick materials kind of abut, so there's a natural vertical joint there. And then on the right side of the picture, the paint line stops behind the downspout, basically. And then you can kind of see how the penthouse kind of blends in with the tower in front too, so it's not a noticeable feature. And you can't see the penthouse. There's limited visibility from Prospect Avenue and then almost no visibility from the courtyard side. And is there any other questions from the committee?
The discussion is open to the committee. Are there other comments from the committee?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Pettit has his hand raised.
Please. Mr. Pettit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to confirm the applicant's testimony that this was reviewed and approved by the Euclid Corridor Design Review Committee on August 5th. And they fully support the project.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Bailey has her hand raised.
Ms. Bailey, please. Ms. Bailey?
Yes. I don't have any issue with the design of the borders. I just only have a question. Are those thickness or the width of it, are those in the existing borders that's already there and you just painting in certain colors, or you just made those with the sizes yourself?
Yeah, so those are.
See one for example, the one on the left is a little wider than the others. You know, on the left, like you can see one is thinner. I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's the existing
only thing I see.
projection. That's the existing projections as it is.
Okay, those are existing.
Yeah. So we're just so I think if you look at the existing photos, those are like the really dark gray bands that frame in the checkerboards.
Mr. Chair, it looks like we lost Ms. Bailey temporarily. And we do not have any other hands raised at this time.
Very good. I think we can call for a vote or a motion, please. Is someone prepared to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, this is Bob Strickland. I would move to approve the certificate of appropriateness as presented by the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Do we have a second?
This is
Anthony Santoro, second.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pettit, would you please call for a vote?
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey, Ms. Bailey, Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Santora,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Our next project is the concept plan, case 23064, Franklin, West Clinton. In addition to the house at 5901 Franklin Boulevard, could we proceed with the presentation, please?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to let the commission know that the next two items are together. They
Okay.
involve a new addition and the demolition of a rear building. We're looking at the addition conceptually today, so we won't take action on that, but the applicants are asking for action on the demolition of the rear outbuilding.
Which is item number 7.
Correct.
All right, so should we then proceed with item number 7 and then go back?
I think we should see the conceptual proposal, and then we will have information from the site visit and the history that Carl did. So I think we should see the new addition first.
Very good. Let's do that.
Great. Hi, good morning. This is Matt Orheck from LDA Architects. I believe Samantha Ayotte from LDA is also here as well. We, as Don mentioned, will be presenting the entire project holistically, and then we can talk about the two specific items and the action required. Next slide, please. So the project is located at 5901 Franklin Boulevard. The site consists of 2 buildings. One is a commercial building that's located in fronts along Franklin Boulevard. It's a 2-story brick building. The second building is a former brick garage that sits behind the property. At this time, our plan is only related to the demolition of the rear building. Next slide, please. This is just a context plan showing in better detail and definition where it sits within the neighborhood. So obviously the historic building that fronts Franklin fits kind of within the context, whereas the other larger garage building sort of sits behind, nestled there within sort of inboard within the site and behind adjacent residential properties to the east, and a church and church parking lot to the west, as well as the former commercial space to the south. Next slide, please. These are just additional context photos so you can see how the site lays out in relation to the neighboring properties. Immediately adjacent to us is, to the west, is a parking lot for the church. That portion is not on our property. So if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, you can sort of see how that lays out. So just as a point of clarification, that parking lot is not our property and is not associated with our building in any way. And then looking to the picture in the top left corner, you can see the 2-story building that fronts fronts Franklin with the driveway down the side. Next slide, please. And so we've prepared some contextual photos of this building. This is the historic building that sits along Franklin. At this point, we're not proposing any changes to the front main facade of this building or to the west facade that you see in the bottom corner that would be visible from the street. The owner has been undergoing, I think, some interior renovations to this project in the past, but this presentation, this proposal doesn't include any of that work. That was all done previously. So we're not proposing any changes to the historic building. Next slide, please. And so going to the rear of the property, these are photos of the existing garage building. This property is obviously in a historic district. The front building, that's the 2-story building, that is a contributing building to the district, whereas this rear building that we're proposing to demolish is not a contributing building to the district. And so you can see it's fallen into disrepair. Our client purchased the property a couple years ago and has no intention of using this building for any sort of commercial purpose. At this point, they would like to remove that building and restore the rear of the property to a use that's more conducive to a residential type of activity. Next slide, please. This is just a Sanborn map showing the buildings in the vicinity as well as the house and the garage. As we said, the garage structure is not noted in the National Register designation for the Franklin West Clinton Historic District or the boundary increase that happened following the original designation. Next slide, please. Sam, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, so this is the demolition plan that we have prepared. And again, as Matt said, we don't plan on doing any renovations to the existing historic building. We just plan to demolish the disrepaired garage building that has no historic significance. I know that we were on site a couple last week, and we talked about maybe salvaging some of the coping stone of the building and maybe some of the brick that could be salvageable, but a lot of it is in disrepair. But that would just be salvaged for maybe site plan, maybe brick pavers or something like that for the site plan. There's no current trees or anything that would need to be kept, no landscaping that is significant to the property. If you go to the next slide. So this is the proposed plan that we have. Just we have conceptually designed an addition for the building of the historic building to be built behind the current garage that they have. The current garage would then turn into a craft room or an extra storage space, and then we would have sort of a in-law suite and proposed garage and storage behind that. And then where the current building that we are proposing to demolish would be, it would just turn into landscaping that provides a better use for this to be a residential space. Next slide. So this is a perspective looking at the historic building, and as you can see, there already currently is a existing roof deck on top of the garage that they have. So where that double door on the two-story building comes out before there's a double step down, that is all already existing, and that would remain to exist, and then we would just continue and add to that. And then the garage, the new proposed garage, currently we have proposed it as either a standing seam or like a metal paneled material, and then the new in-law suite portion where the roof deck would be on top of would be a wooden rain screen siding. And then any pavers or anything in the back would either be stone or stamped, or could potentially be some of the salvaged material that we would get from the demolished building. If you go to the next slide, I think it's just another perspective from the other side. There is currently a utility pole that you can see pictured here that we are providing at least 5 feet of distance from it, that will build around it, just because it doesn't provide any, it provides a line to the building that we are planning to demolish, but it currently doesn't serve the historic building. So we wouldn't even need to use power from that for the proposed addition. And then if you go to the next slide, this is just showing from Franklin how the addition is viewed from the street, and you can, it's less it's shorter stories. It's only one story, and it's very it's less visible from the street than the existing building was. If you go to the next slide. So these are the proposed materials that we were thinking of, and there was conversation previously of us sort of designing these additions as to sort of mimic the existing garage, but I think with the lack of salvageable materials, we didn't want to propose something and sort of propose something that wasn't effectively designed to mimic the historic aspects of that garage. So, and there's multiple other either additions or properties within the area that are utilizing more modern materials. And again, it's the visibility from the street is minimal. So we feel like this can be achieved in an aesthetic manner. And I think that might be the last slide. Yeah, just some sections cutting through, seeing how that the size, how the size plays with the existing historic building. And we also were approved from Franklin West for the conceptual plan and for proposed demolition of the building.
Thank you. Mr. Pena, any further comments?
Just wanted to confirm that this was reviewed by the Franklin West Clinton Design Review Committee. They did approve the demolition. Their comments about the new construction included doing a survey for orphaned storage tanks underground near the garage. They asked about a tree preservation plan as the project progresses, and there was some concern about the vertical metal siding proposed for the new garage, which is visible from Franklin Boulevard. But they did take action and approve the demolition. And Carl Brunges has a presentation on the history of that structure and the site visit to the property.
Great, wonderful.
Thank you very much. I did the history on this. The garage in the back actually predates the building in the front by 3 years. The new garage was taken out in 1921, and then the store and suites in 1924. There were 2 permits for gas tanks, one of which was a portable gas tank, so I'm guessing that's no longer there, but I don't know if the other one was removed, but it may be about 550 gallons potentially, or how much is in there, or if there's anything in there. So that will need to be researched. We have a lot of photos of the front because after zoning went into effect, conditional uses were needed. So although we don't have a lot of the rear of the building, the front as it was, it's kind of neat to see how this progressed over time. When it was a laundry service and dry cleaning. And you can see the garage in the back, and that's basically the view you have of the garage now. It's also blocked by the church next door. So the front building had different uses, and in the rear, there was a repair garage almost from the beginning to 1969. Then Midwest Specialty Meats was there in 1969 through the 1980s, and then it. I don't know what it's been used for since then. It's really difficult to find some uses in there, but like I said, plenty of here's a good idea of what you see from the street as you're going down Franklin. You don't see that garage in the back. We tried to do as much magic as we could to this, but that's it in 1971. That was taken from a negative. So the current conditions, I did the site visit. There really isn't anything architecturally significant on here. We talked about the coping stones. You can see it's been altered on the sides over time. The interior it's been altered as well. There's nothing really significant architecturally. This is the rear of the building. It has about a 5-foot setback from the rear of the lot, I think. And then just some more interior photos. And that's all I have for you right now.
Thank you, Carl. Very good. I think we should open it for discussion with committee members. Any questions or comments from
Mr. Chair, Mr. Santora has his hand raised.
Mr. Santoro, please?
Yeah, Carl, thank you, Mr. Chair, first of all. Carl, when you did the site investigation on that back building, what was the structural condition? It seemed like from some images it was pretty degraded. In some images it looked like it was okay. So I'm just wondering if you got a sense of how well maintained it was. I know, I believe the applicant stated that was not very well maintained, and you can tell from the exterior that there's some maintenance issues. So I'm just wondering as to the viability of it as any type of long-lasting structure.
I didn't think it was in the best condition. I've seen worse. I know there had been some conversation in the past few years of it being converted into something else, but I don't know if that would have been viable at this point. A lot of stuff has been cut up, and I don't know how that would affect it structurally if it was converted into something else at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Anthony, Carl, this is Matt at LDA. Carl spoke briefly about the potential for a use conversion. That was actually the original intent of ownership, was to turn that into their residence and sort of reconfigure it and reprogram it to be a residential space in addition to the building up front. But after going through some initial planning, they determined that it was just the building was too dilapidated to really feasibly do that. In a sort of a non-extremely difficult manner. So just
okay,
further add to
well,
that.
thank you. I appreciate it, and I appreciate that you guys looked at rehabilitation first before just coming in to demolish it. I have no issues. I always hate to lose older all brick buildings, but I think, as Carl said, this isn't really going to be seen from the street. It is kind of dilapidated. And I think the use shifted forward with additional residential space in the back is a much better use of the back of the property. So I have no issues with the demolition. I would like to see you guys try to maintain some of the material and maybe utilize it as much as you can. But if it's pretty well dilapidated, I don't know how much you're going to get out of it. My only other comment is in regards to the shed roof addition that you're adding. I tend to agree with the design review comments. I would probably like to see a different type of metal paneling system or a different type of finish system for that portion of the building. It is the most pronounced, and you will kind of see it down the driveway. It won't be as visible, but you will get glimpses of it. And I'm also kind of wondering about the roof line of it. It doesn't seem like it's projecting at all. I don't know if that was intentional, maybe just something from the rendering, but I would like take a look at that and explore your materials. I like the back area. I think it's fine. The addition is fine. Another question, if that utility pole is servicing the back building only and it's being demolished, why is the pole not being removed?
I think it was, I think it services the adjacent property. And then there was just one single line coming back to the garage that we proposed to demolish. So
Okay.
It's being used with other properties, but not for us.
Okay, thank you for the clarification on that.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think it's a good project, and I look forward to the restoration of that front building.
Thank you, Mr. Santoro. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Bailey has her hand raised.
Ms. Bailey, please.
Yeah, two of my questions was asked by Mr. Santelli. Could I look at the like the overall site plan, like where the existing building in and where the new one is gonna be? Well, like before, if I can see a site plan somewhere, okay. Yeah, that's fine. So, the garage, and so everything on here is being demolished, or both buildings being demolished, or it's just the garage? Which one is the garage? I'm looking at, okay, that's the one that's being demolished. All right.
Correct.
And based on your presentation, Carl, you mentioned about the underground tanks and stuff. Do you know which building has those information, or you don't know? Do you know if the
It would be-
garage may have had it, or what was the function of the garage?
It would have been related to the garage specifically.
Okay. All right. So I
it
have a
will have to
question
be-
for the owner. So when you demolish the building, have you done any study? I can see that you may not try to just. Have you just did any studies or anything on how you're going to remove the underground tanks and everything, just to make sure the soil is not toxic or anything, and it's clean and all that before you kind of use that property before you develop it? Is that part of your plan?
Sure. So at this point, we have not done any studies. We wanted to get our approval first to demolish it before we reached out to some environmental engineers and those necessary individuals for hazardous material testing and all that sort of stuff. So certainly we would reach out to the necessary professionals prior to the demolition. I think it's important information that we got from Carl about those tanks. I'm not sure the owner was aware of those. So we will, once, pending approval, we'll start our full investigation before we just start knocking stuff down.
Okay, the way I asked that question is because in this particular case, I don't know if some of the material might not be able to be reused. That's something that might be part of the study that you might want to see if some of the material can be reused. So that's why the study is important. Yes, I understand elevation wide above ground, it might could be safe. But just wanted to just put that out there, just to let everybody know. Now back to the drawing. I just have just a few questions on the deck. So is that your deck, right? I didn't hear much about what type of material on your deck, and your more information about your railing, what type of material is that? And I see you have steps right there. What kind of material is that on your step down or on your steps?
The material of the shed roof addition is like a metal panel, and I think someone made a comment earlier. I think Anthony did of there not being like an extension of the roof line, and that is done on purpose. It's supposed to be sort of like a seamless transition from the wall up to the roof, kind of like the metal wrapping up and around as like one form, and then the other portion where the living space would be is like a horizontal, it could actually be a horizontal or a vertical wood slatted rain screen. And then there's already an existing roof deck that is kind of a composite decking material, waterproofing decking material, and we would propose to, purchase more of that and continue that decking on top. And then the stairs are have similar treads to the decking on top, like a composite weatherproof material. And then the railings would be just a metal, like a black metal railing with cabling within.
Ms. Bailey, you're muted.
Sorry about that. The larger building is the existing, I thought from the door out is new construction. So you tell me that the shorter version with a railing and it's also existing? Because I was looking at that photograph, I thought the larger portion of the building is existing. I just need to know what I'm looking at.
Yeah, so that portion is existing. So there's like the larger existing building, and then there's a one-story garage that is currently existing that has an existing roof deck. And then we're proposing to like step it down, and then that step down would be all of the new proposed and new construction.
All right, okay. Now you can go back to the other first. So now I see why you're saying that's part of the roof decking. So I see where that is, part of the roof decking, and then you're stepping down. So that's actually the face of the existing building. So I can see that. So so I can see that you in the future is going to be using that as a roof. Is that going to be planned as a future gathering space constantly on top of the roof?
Yes. As much as they can use it in a city that is like Cleveland with the weather, but yes.
Okay. All right. Well, that's why I was just looking at what type of material you're using for that purpose and all. All right.
Yeah, it would be like a weather-resistant, weatherproof composite decking material that kind of has like a wood faux finish on it.
And I didn't hear what you did you say much about what type of railing, the material you're using for that?
Yeah, it would be a metal railing. At least current proposal would be that we have a metal railing with all of the inlay portions would be like a cabling. So all pretty modern materials.
All right, thank you very much. This is a great project. All right, but as far as the mattering for the work, just take a look at that. But that's why I didn't say too much, because Mr. Sattel already answered my question on that. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And certainly too, we understand that the project will need to come back for final review to both the Franklin West Boulevard Committee as well as you all for final review. So when we bring that back, we'll have the materials more finalized. We'll have railing details and all that sort of stuff that you mentioned now. So we understand that this is just conceptual at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments from the committee? No action is actually required.
Mr. Chair, are you ready for a motion to approve the demolition of the garage?
Yes, I am, please.
All right. I'll move to approve the certificate of appropriateness for the demolition of the garages proposed by the applicant.
Thank you very much. Will someone second it, please?
This is Alan, I'll second.
Thank you, Alan. Mr. Pat, would you please call for a vote?
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Santora,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you very much.
Great, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Our next project is the concept plan for the Tremont Oaks Phase 2 West 14th Street. We've seen this before also.
And I'm trying, Mayor, I'm trying to get my video to work, but it won't work. Maybe if I. I can't get my video to work. Is everyone hearing an echo?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you, Rick. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, I don't know why the camera isn't working. Okay. Well, I'm getting terrible feedback. Maybe what I'll do is let me introduce the project quickly. I'll let Dan start the presentation. I'll close and try to answer.
Rick, you're signed in twice. Maybe if you closed one of those, we wouldn't have the echo.
Who will be doing the presentation?
Rick, are you still with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm having trouble getting on Zoom. I'll retry. Let me introduce the project first and let Dan Cirque, the architect, go through the presentation. This is the phase 2 of Tremont Oaks. You've already seen phase 1, and you've already approved and we've built it. Phase 2 is identical. We went through landmarks at Tremont. There were a few little changes that Dan can describe. But a lot of it, I'm guessing you could probably skip because you already have seen it. So Dan, as you go through, you could probably go through a little faster, and if you're going too fast, the committee can stop you. I'm going to drop out now and try to re-enter.
Actually, we can see you now, Rick, and you sound fine. So maybe just mute for now and hold tight. I can see you now.
You're good. You're good now, Rick. I wouldn't do anything to jump.
Okay, now I can't see you guys. This is really weird. Okay, well, go ahead, keep going.
Okay.
I can't see the presentation, but so be it.
Good morning, commission members. My name is Daniel Cirque, architect, SA Group, 1322 Old River Road, representing Rick Maring on this project. The slide before you shows the culmination of our previous efforts, and happy to announce that phase 1 is completed. And from everything we've heard, that it's been received well by the community architecturally. So you can see those photos on the existing context. Carl, you can quickly move forward. This is phase 2, so you can see the existing phase 1 shaded to the left. The building to the north is proposed phase 2. Rick has negotiated with ODOT to obtain additional property to be able to construct phase 2. As you can see by the shape of the building, we are tight to a property line. We're not right on it, but we're tight to a property line in the rear, which created a little bit unique architectural issues for us related to the floor plan. We did present this plan to Treatment conceptually. They gave us a few comments that we were to revise and then present to this board for feedback, similar to what we did in phase 1. The comments were focused primarily on the north elevation of the building that we will get into, very similar to our previous conversations about the south elevation, what to do with the end wall condition of the building. So Carl, you can move along. So here is the landscape plan illustrating that the ramping mechanism, the entry are all handled in the exactly same fashion as phase 1. Carl, you can move along. I think everyone's familiar with the micro units. So unless I need to go back to these slides, Carl, we can probably skip through these slides unless someone has a question. We will come back to this slide, but what I'm going to point out is the unit 4 and 8 were the units that we modified based on the comments from Treatment. And I'll get to that when we show the renderings. Move along, Carl. So this is the view looking down West 14th as you approach. And the previous presentation, the center bay of the building did not have windows. It had a blank facade, which was similar to what we all came to as a conclusion on how to handle the south elevation. But Treatment felt that now this being a more primary focus as you approach the building needed a little bit more than what we did on the south of phase 1. So what we did was went back to the floor plan and said, hey, can we do something to take the kitchen wall off of the exterior so that we could open up additional glazing along this facade? We walked away from the meeting with Treatment looking at landscaping, maybe some other articulation architecturally with the facade, but we really heard them say an extra window or 2 windows would be the trick. So we revised the plans, and we can go back to those if anyone has questions, but we basically flipped the unit over so that the blank wall that gets generated by the backsplash of the kitchen is no longer on the exterior. Now the nook for the table is now on the exterior facade. So we can move along. So this was the building in context, and that is an actual photo of phase 1. So here again, everyone should be familiar. This was exactly the elevation that was approved in phase 1. Carl, you can just move through these. And again, and then there's a little more focused view of that north elevation. It gave us a little more stair stepping in the water table. It really did help activate the facade. Now we, obviously look for conceptual approval today, and then we plan to take this back to the Treatment group for their commentary on this. And then Carl, you can move along. You can see the portion of the building that would be difficult to recognize because it's very densely forested behind it as the buffer to the freeway, is how we handled the turn of the building at the rear so that we respect the property line. Thank you very much, and that concludes my presentation. Oh, sorry, just all the materials are the same that were approved in phase 1 and as illustrated. So again, that concludes my presentation. I look forward to any comments or questions.
Thank you. Comments or questions from the commission, please?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Santoro has his hand raised.
All right, no comments.
Mr. Santoro has his hand raised.
Santara, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One quick clarification note. Is this for conceptual approval? Or conceptual review, excuse me?
It's only for conceptual review.
Conceptual. We need to go back to the other committee, yes.
Which other committee is that?
Tremont West.
That would be the Tremont Historic District Design Review Committee.
Okay, because they are only, and this is one of the things I think, Don, I think we need to have a conversation about. Those committees are only advisory to this body. So just everybody keep that in mind. I know people keep talking about approvals, but they are recommendations of approvals to this body, which then offers the actual approvals. So that's fine. That answers that question. So thank you. Can you go to the site plan real quick? I think the building looks great. I think it matches very nicely with what is constructed next to it. I don't have any issues with it. I think the materiality is good. Okay, so there's not really enough room back in the property line. I was wondering if there was an opportunity to get the parking behind the building, but given the property line, there's just not enough room even for a single parking space back there. You know, one of the things that I probably would like to see a little bit more of, and as you guys work through it, I would probably like to see a little bit more buffering of the parking along the north side of the building. Right now, I don't think there's any. It's just right up against the sidewalk. If you guys could try to squeeze a little bit of landscaping in there or some nice fencing, I think it would really help that streetscape along the parking lot. But other than that, I think it's fine.
Any other comments from the committee?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Anderson has her hand raised.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is pretty much identical on the West 14th facing side to the building that's already constructed to the south of this, correct?
Are you asking the architect?
Yes.
Oh. I would not say identical because we took the opportunity to add the additional windows on this elevation.
Okay, but the windows are on the north elevation, correct?
Correct.
All right, the eastern front is pretty much identical to the one next door.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of the buildings across the street, you know, bookends.
The buildings across the street, the two apartment buildings on the corner of Fairfield.
That's correct.
I did have someone ask me, somebody who doesn't live in the neighborhood, but she's in the neighborhood quite a bit. She asked me if the first building was public housing, so I had to clarify to her, no, it's not. It's Airbnb. Are you going to continue with the Airbnb concept for the second building?
I'm not sure if Rick is on. I see him logging in again. That would obviously be a question to my client.
Yeah, I understand. Concerned about the parking.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm back. I don't know how to close the app because I keep getting an echo. But in any case, I am having communication with the neighborhood about the Airbnb that we have done on phase one. So that's an ongoing discussion. We meeting with the company and also the economic committee in the next week and a half. And also, for Mr. Santora, I heard the communication. We have gone to Tremont landmarks, and that's what Dan was referring to that made the changes to this presentation. We will then take your recommendations back to Tremont and then back to you again. So there's still 2 more landmark steps to go. Just to make that clear.
So, okay, I do want to be very clear that there is only one landmarks process for approval of these buildings, and that is our process. There is a landmarks.
Understand. Yeah, you're right. You're
Okay.
right. Totally understand.
I just want to be clear so that it's not getting confusing and, we run into, oh, well, they approved this. Why are you guys not approving it? There's only one process.
I've been down this road many times. I totally understand what you're saying.
Okay.
And I agree with you. I heard what you said about the fencing along the sidewalk and a barrier there. I totally agree with you on that. And on the Airbnb, I need to discuss that with the community.
All right, thank you. I have a question for the architect. How are you dealing with the sound from the highway? Traffic?
As far as the tenant, we have not had any problems with the tenants. It seems like due to the fence and also the trees, that has not been a problem.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And yeah, and this is Daniel, if I can speak to that as well. We've attenuated, we understand that, we recognize that. We also have the issue of the units being right next to each other. And we have deployed, industry techniques for separating the sound through both transmission and vibration. I can get into more nitty gritty detail, but there's basically a standoff wall between the units to mitigate the sound. I visited the site, and the units that are constructed, I feel met that.
Okay. Thank you. So what action should we be taking, Mr. Pettit?
There's no action to be taken today. This is just concept review and comment and direction. So there's no motion necessary.
Thank you. All right, any other comments then?
I just have a comment. And I like the concept. The plan is just a master assistant. The only thing I just have is just now that you add the second building and you add the pathway for the existing building, I just want to make sure you just have enough turning radius for the existing parking for the first building and for the second parking in the new parking lot. That's the only question I have.
If I were going to answer that, I would say phase one is already working with that single driveway as we speak. Unfortunately, people are pulling over on the vacant area too often, but we've already worked that out on phase one. For phase two, it's actually probably a little easier because the drive is right off the street. You turn right into the parking spaces. What I will say is this is a tight spot. It's totally understood. We have met the zoning requirement of the 6 spaces. So that will work. But the other part, and probably a bigger picture, which I think definitely falls into this committee, is when you're driving down West 14th from the north, you get off the freeways on, towards there, or the trail path, or and you drive to the south towards Lincoln Park. As it stands, even before we built phase one, this was really a dead zone, and it never was kept up or looked right. And you also had that bad house that you see as the first thing as you come into the community. The idea here is this is an entrance to Tremont, and if we could, by making the sister building architecturally, it'll make it feel better. And if we can make that front area all the way to the end of the triangle look much better, then entering Tremont, this will be a nice view of the area. And I think the architect did a great job on the facades of the buildings where it's appealing to drive in to Tremont along here. It also, maybe this isn't for this discussion, but it would also be nice if ODOT would take care of the green area around the freeway entrances, but that's not for me to talk about. But from an urban planning standpoint, I think this achieves the goal of making Tremont a more desirable view as you come down the road.
So, okay, I understand what you're saying. So, by you adding this building, which is fine, like I said, I like your concept with the new building and having it next to the existing. I'm talking about once you get inside, now that you have the second building. The existing parking lot is already there, I understand that. So is it going to interfere with the existing parking lot, how you come in, whereas they can have enough turning radius once they're on the inside? That's the part that I'm talking about.
You talking about cars, or are you talking about people walking into the building?
No, I'm talking about the car. Once you're on the inside.
Yeah, Dan, you could probably.
Right, yeah. You see where the car of the vehicle is right now on the site plan. And once the car goes up and you're turning, just want to make sure that enough turning radius now that you have this building right here, the new proposed building. Because right now it wasn't there and there wasn't enough room for the cars. Now that the building is there, that's the space I'm talking about.
Okay, there's already, I don't know if you can read it on there, 11.5 feet between the two buildings. And that driveway already exists. We have that concrete board, and the people who drive up that driveway and turn left to behind the building. So that's already functioning. The other driveway will be the new one that is, hasn't been built yet. And that's an easier turnoff from the street. And there's also that big tree apron area before you get to, you cross the sidewalk before you get to the parking garage. So you're not in the street when you're making a turn.
Yeah, I understand it was personal. That was before the building. So what's happening behind that building where there could be enough space for the vehicle? If that building wasn't there, yes, there's enough space for the vehicle to come from the first one. So what's happening behind the proposed new proposal? Is anything happening behind there?
You mean that small little triangle?
Yeah, that small space.
Oh, theoretically, right now it's not planned for anything, but theoretically, maybe a car could fit in there if it was a smaller car. But it's not planned for.
All right. So what I'm saying is, yes, that existing condition on the left it was functional, whereas the vehicle is able to come there out from that space without nothing there. Now that you had this new proposal, I just want to have you to look at and make sure the vehicles that's coming out will be able to maneuver themselves, maneuver the vehicle from that space to be able to get in and out. That's all I'm saying. Now that you have this proposed building there.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I don't think that changes I think what you're trying to say is the car parked behind phase one comes out the driveway just like they did, whether phase two is there or not. They come on the driveway. And the driveway is on the phase one site plan, right, lot.
Ms. Bailey, this is Daniel Sirk, the architect. Rick, and one thing I want to remind you too, that there was some concern from the local community right when the project was turning over about cars parking on the vacant lot. And so, you know, you put those measures in place to make sure people would park where they're supposed to, behind the building. I drove that personally myself, pulled my car in without going on the adjacent property and was able to park in the spot and maneuver my car back out. I think on paper it looks very tight, but it was maneuverable to turn my car around and back out of this space.
All right, I'm not suggesting to add a vehicle there. I'm just only saying just to make sure the building that's existing, that's already there with its own existing parking lot, be able to come out and be able to maneuver in and out with this new proposal you're having. I'm not saying to add a parking space behind the new proposal, just saying to make sure the existing condition you have is able to maneuver in and out from the existing that's there right now.
Okay, Rick, I think I understand clearly I believe what you're saying is that perhaps right where the note says proposed two-story apartment building, that be available to phase one for a turnaround. Is that what you're suggesting?
Not suggesting anything. I just want you to look at how the existing clients that's living or in this building right now to be able to maneuver in and out of this tight space now that you add this proposed new building on your right.
Okay. Rick, I would say prior to our next presentation, I'll personally go there myself and maneuver my car.
Yeah,
and make sure that just do a real-time study of making sure that this parking works in reality, not just on paper. Understood. It's only 5 minutes away from my office, so I'll
You're muted.
Thank you, everybody. So we're done for the day.
Thank you very much for all your input. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Patrick, any other comments from you?
I don't have a report. I just want to point out that today is the last official meeting for Ava Schmidt of our staff. She's moving on to a fellowship at Famicos Foundation. I just want to thank her for her year of service with AmeriCorps and to wish her well in all future pursuits.
Yes, thank you. And from us as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for your time today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.